parents, they sure, like a mom gives you life, right? Like gives birth to you, right? And I've got insane love for my family, but you don't owe them anything. You don't owe them your happiness. Yo, what's going on, guys? Welcome back to a brand new episode of The Art of E-Commerce. We've got our co-host, Tony, the man next to me, to my right. And we have a very juicy one in store for you, hopefully. And let's go right into it.
Absolutely. I mean, one of our hidden favorite topics, people and society.
Yeah, man, this is going to be juicy because I feel like, look, there's a lot of advice thrown around, and look, I'm not saying it's no animosity. I'm not saying it's complete bullshit, but we do have a different take when it comes to how an entrepreneur should deal with relationships. Some of the people you should keep close to you. Should you cut friends out? Like, should you not? Like, how to deal with that whole scenario, right? Because if you guys are building a business or you've already built a well-established business, chances are you maybe had to make some tough decisions when it came to your relationships. Maybe a few of them you've regretted, right? You've come to regret. I definitely have, because I've made some good decisions. I've made some bad decisions. And I think the reason why this conversation is really interesting is because we've been OG friends, like since day one, since very, very little. And our relationship has really triumphed, over the past few years, especially, man, because I hadn't seen you in close to 2 years. So you recently flew from London to Madrid like a few days ago, currently staying at the HQ at the ecom.io HQ. But yeah, it's been able to triumph over some decently tough times, right? And yeah, we want to share with you what has worked for us, the way I see relationships and kind of that whole sphere.
Absolutely. And I think it's also important to note, like, people do relationships in different ways, right? And everybody has their own method. And I guess that also applies for everything we're talking about here. But, like, in the end of the day, just because, someone preaches a winning formula doesn't mean that's the way to go. But at the same time, I think, we've also come to realize that there's common traits and common formulas that people follow for success, right? And just because it worked for the majority also doesn't mean it'll work for you. But at the same time, like, there are signs to look out for that, should mean and could be interpreted in certain ways with other people.
Yeah, dude. I mean, for sure. We're not one of our aims is to not tell people how to live. Like, that's not something that we're gonna do. Like, you can take whatever you want away from this podcast. Like, I'm just a guy who has built businesses, right? And you are too, right? You're building businesses, so that's what we do best. We can obviously get into the strategies and the hacks, but when it comes to like anything outside of the business realm, we're just telling you what has worked for us, right? And how we view certain things and what I personally think is valuable during the journey. But it's not life advice, as you mentioned. Like, people have different relationships and they treat them differently, and they different strokes for different folks at the end of the day. But I think this is going to be valuable to many who are looking for who don't really know how to manage that whole aspect, which is not really talked about as well, right?
Yeah, true. No, it's something that kind of gets glossed over. And I think honestly the vast majority of people, especially in our parents' generation, like, they grew up in their town with the people that they grew up with, and then they just kind of went to life with these people, and like never really moved on past these people. I mean, it's ironic for us to be speaking about that because that was the case for us, even though like you moved away, and like, yes, I hadn't seen you for 2 years now, but I also didn't see you for at least 3 years or so back in the day when we were like 15, 16, right?
Yep.
And we're still friends to this day, still very close. But nowadays, with the options you have and with the connectivity and the resources to meet people, the truth is, like, there's not really that much of an excuse for you to be with people who, firstly, aren't your favorite people, and secondly, don't really want you to succeed.
Yeah. I think a big realization as you grow up is realizing that the people you considered your friends were just situational people. You know, like you guys just had one thing in common. You saw each other a lot. You know, like you grew up together and you went to the same school, but these people are not there because of you. You know, they're there because like the school, you know, put you in the same classroom. And sure, in our case, right, that, you know, obviously that the situation developed a relationship, but then it went beyond that, right? It went to a point where like you have love for this person, right? But it's funny when you like come to realize, shit, like this person is, you know, doesn't really care too much about my success, doesn't really care too much about my happiness. They're just situational friends. They're just looking to have fun. And as soon as they see their own insecurities, you know, you know, their own insecurities exposed, right, by some of the stuff that I do. For example, if I choose to level up, it really doesn't land well with them because maybe they're insecure about that, or they don't want, you know, they don't want someone to level up and someone they grew up with, and you know they feel bad because they're not doing shit. That's when you realize. And the biggest thing for me has been realizing that, you know, when someone you consider your friend generally cannot show happiness for your own successes, like that's the biggest seller. And it sounds very cliche and it sounds very obvious, right? But it's sometimes it's subtle to pick up. You know, it's like they might show a, you know, they might smile or something like that, right? But inside it, they're hurting. And sometimes they generally want to like be happy for you, right? They might feel like, you know, they might generally want to show happiness, but they cannot. And unfortunately, like that's not gonna work, you know, because it's just it's so tough to have that type of friend in your circle.
Definitely, man. And I think, I mean, a lot of it comes down to, firstly, not being comfortable with the fact that you're leveling up and they're still where they're at. But there's also the element of envy, right? Of like seeing you and being like, oh, I could have done it if I did this, or I could have done that. But you're not in the end of the day, right? But this concept of situational friends is something that really, like, for me at least personally, since, you know, the last 4 years or so, since leaving school and really coming to see different friends from different phases of my life, I really came to understand this, the significance of this, right? And the fact that, you know, there are people, as you said, who just happen to be there at the same time in your life, and you guys had fun together, maybe like in a project or in school, you had some banter and all these things. But like, in the end of the day, do you really like them for them, or do you just like them because of the shared experiences you had, you know?
Yeah, it's tough, you know, and also a lot of the, you know, one of the things that you come to realize is because some friends are also, they're not just situational, but they're interest based, right? So what I found is if your friendship doesn't go beyond an interest and cannot withstand you guys kind of like finding different interests and doing like different stuff and still being core friends, you know, finding different stuff and not spending as much time and still being really, really good friends, that's another sign, right? Obviously, you can have people that you just, you know, they're in your network, in your proximity because you share a bunch of interests and you guys do like similar stuff. But I feel like for me, a really close friend is someone that I don't have to, like, we don't have to be doing the exact same thing, but we still connect over just life in general, you know, and you're still there for this person.
100%. I mean, honestly, that brings up a interesting topic, controversial as well, and some people just don't know how to do it at all. But it's like the concept of learning to move on from people in life, right? And learning to accept, because sometimes you also come to realize that, like, okay, this person isn't good to have in my life and I need to go somewhere, but this person isn't on the same page, right? And they still consider you to be like their close friend and whatever your relationship was leading up to that point. Personally, for you at least, how do you deal with those kinds of situations?
Basically, like, just kind of, you know, moving away from these people, right? Yeah. I think the main way of I just think most of it just happens organically, you know, like, sure, you may have to set some boundaries if they haven't really caught the message, but once you stop kind of showing up to the scene and you stop showing up to kind of the environment and the stuff you guys used to do, because you're just doing other shit and you're busy like leveling up or doing your own stuff. I'm not saying, you know, what they do is like, not worthy, or not leveling. If you're not leveling up, like you're inferior. Absolutely not, right? But if it's not serving you, and you want to move away from this person, and literally just slowing you down, I think the main thing is just you don't have to be aggressive about it. You don't have to like go up to this person and tell them like, we're done, like I'm cutting you off, like you don't deserve to be part of my elite network. Like, no, like, stop doing that, right? I've seen a lot of people preach that approach. Obviously that's an exaggeration, but like you don't have to like confront these people and tell them like, look, either you support me, or you kind of just like it comes up organically. You just you kind of lock into your work, and you stop showing up to the things that are not serving you. And I think they get the message, because as soon as if they weren't really their your core friend, someone that has a lot of love for you, they were probably either interest-based friends or situational friends. And if you're not in that situation or those places anymore, or you don't share those interests, that relationship is just naturally, organically gonna like phase out, and that's completely fine. And I think that's like really the best approach. And understand that it's not a big deal. It's not that deep. Like, it'll just kind of phase out, and you'll be left with the core group of people. And I feel that the point you brought up is really important. I feel like a lot of people are scared of making the group and the circle tighter. Yeah. Honestly, I think that's just a byproduct of having a better, like having more of your, like being much more clear about what type of people you want in your life, and be much more clear about the things you resonate with. I think honestly, this is just my personal opinion, but I think that's just honestly a byproduct of you setting boundaries and you kind of getting crystal clear and having more self-awareness on who you truly are. Because there's not going to be that many people that are going to be there for you just naturally. Like, there's really only a handful of people in life in general. Like, I just think this is how life works, right? There's only going to be a handful of people in life that are going to have genuine love for you, right? Like, it's not like, it would be great if everyone just absolutely passionately loved everyone, right? But I think it's just, there's a handful of people that can have that type of love for you, and that can support you no matter what.
100%, man. And I think, like, especially for those of you who are in university or are in school and have these kind of social settings, right? There's sometimes a big pressure to fit in and like to conform to what's going on, and to be like liked by the cool people, And, like in school, again, maybe going into too much detail, but in school, like we were always like popular, if you will, or like enjoyed ourselves in that sense. But especially as I went into university, and especially this year as I did my master's, and I was really like working on my development and my business side on the side as well, it really came to me like how futile that all is. Right? Like, this need to be liked by everyone, and this need to be like approved and have like everyone know who you are and everyone think you're cool and all of this. Like, in the end of the day, everyone's running their own race, and there will be people who will be there by your side to support you and will feel genuine happiness for you doing that. And those are the people you want closer to you. But the rest, it doesn't matter what they think of you.
Yeah. My biggest breakthrough when it came to freedom, and I think you're experiencing this as well, because you've taken some drastic measures when it comes to like your social media consumption and just like not really giving a shit, right? There's like a different level of freedom that you access when you don't care about what people think. And that for me was like one of the biggest shifts. Like, at the end of the day, right? The only person you should obviously not care about, right? You should care about other people and have love for a lot of people, right? And share that love. But you are born and you die, right? Like, at the end of the day, you want to be happy. You want to have a happy life, right? And if you can invite people into your life because you can make them happy and make yourself happy, then great, right? But at the end of the day, like, you want to make sure that you live a happy life. And when you break away, I'm not saying it's easy, right? But when you break away from the social conditioning and from this need to be approved and this need to be liked and this need to be especially if you have like a need for popularity and being like the liked person in school or like the popular guy or girl in university. When you get rid of that and you truly tap into yourself, that's really when you experience like a whole new level of freedom, because now you're doing what you truly want and not what you want people to think you do, or you want people to, how you want people to view you. I think that's a massive game changer. Again, it's not easy, right? But I feel like if people could work on that, I like give less shits regarding how people view them, it would be a massive shift, especially because you start realizing like people don't, as you said, like people are running their own race, like they don't care, so oftentimes we just make that, we make it up in our heads. It's like, oh, but they're gonna view me in this way, so what, right?
So what? And a lot of the time they're not even paying attention to you. But I mean, linking to that as well, there's also of course there's the friends in your life, but there's also family, right? And I mean, I always preach for, of course, showing love and being there for the people who were there for you, especially growing up, right? But there's a lot of times where in this space especially, you're doing something that goes against what your parents have told you to do and what your parents were brought up being told was the way to move forward in life, right? So that causes friction. And I know for example, I know you have a great relationship with your parents, but when it came to you dropping out of uni and when it came to you, like moving back and taking that step back in your life, it wasn't a frictionless process.
No.
Right? How would you say is best to deal with those kinds of scenarios?
I want to be sensitive to like different cultures, because I know like there's different, certain cultures have like a very, very strong sense of like you owe your family like your life, right?
Hierarchy. Yeah.
Now, do I agree with that? Absolutely not. I feel like parents, they sure, like a mom gives you life, right? Like gives birth to you, right? And I've got insane love for my family, but you don't owe them anything. You don't owe them your happiness. Makes sense? So at the end of the day, they want to, they want to see you happy, right? If they don't, then clearly there's something wrong. And there's parents, there are parents, there's a lot of wrong with a lot of parents, right? Where they're living their life through their own children.
Mm-hmm.
And that's not good, right? And if you can catch that, you should have no pity, right? You could still have love for your parents, but it is absolutely not acceptable for them to live their life through you, for them to pick the career or the path that you should live, right? Because they couldn't achieve it themselves, or feel resentment because they've put you through, they've put a lot of hard work for you to get into the right school, and you haven't decided on that path in the end, right? Now, a lot of people might think like, oh, this guy is ungrateful. Absolutely not, right? I was literally, there's something that I've had to work extensively on, right? Like this sense of, like you owe your parents something, right? But at the end of the day, realize that like your parents are there to pass on, help you with as much as possible, and hopefully put you in the best spot for being happy and successful in your life. But they should not be making those decisions for you to a certain extent, right? Like once you have a certain degree of like, what's good for you, right? Then this is your time to take some, like grow up here and really, trust your gut and really make some bold decisions. And I feel like oftentimes it's really tough to see, but like oftentimes people are just run by their parents, like their whole life, they're living their life through their parents' like ideal of them. And they're not able to break through that. And they don't have a very fulfilled life because they never tapped into what they truly wanted to do. And it's really tough to see.
It is, man. No, it is. It's true.
You just have to face the backlash as well.
Yeah.
Just be like, and that's what we talked about in the previous podcast, or I don't know when we're going to launch that, but like the thing about doing stuff that most people don't do is you have to be ready to take the backlash. So oftentimes I get asked like, oh, but were you not scared that your parents would like react in a certain way, or how did your parents let you? They didn't, right? I knew that, but I was willing to face that because my mission and my own happiness is way more important than what my parents may think. Also because they don't know, right? They don't know, like, when you tell them like, oh, I'm going to start an agency, right? And I'm very confident that if I follow this path, I can do this, right? Because other people have done it, because look at this guy, he's going to be my mentor. Like, they don't know how this whole thing works, right? Yeah. And so you cannot blame them for that, but also don't like blame them for not understanding. Yeah. So I already went into it assuming that they're not going to understand, assuming that like they're just going to like hate on me, right? And still supporting me in many ways, but they're just not going to understand it. They're not going to support my decision. I'm willing to take that. I'm willing to like face that and just put my head down and put my, like block out the noise and focus on the work.
Yeah, prove it through results, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. No, yeah, that's a big one. They're really dealing with the backlash. And I mean, even for other things in life, right? So for example, when you started on TikTok, right? And it was an up and coming platform. I mean, I don't really know how many people knew that you were going on it.
Yeah.
But I'm sure it was something that you got funny looks about.
Yeah.
And questioned and all these things. And now look at you, what you've achieved on that platform and what that's translated to, right?
Yeah. It's literally like, nowadays what I try to do is I look at what everyone is doing and I try to do like the exact opposite. Or I try to look at the thing that some people are like making fun of or like laughing at. I'm like, oh, this probably seems interesting. The typical person like who everyone laughs at school and then they go on to crush it. Like, I'm like, I want to be that guy, in all areas. So if like someone is like, oh, they're not taking the platform seriously, or, they're underestimating something, like the power of whatever, like, I don't know, Snapchat ads or whatever it is, right? Like whatever thing it is. I'm like, let me try to do that. Let me look for like the things that people are underestimating or are sleeping on. And that is a good indicator that I should be doing that one thing,
Absolutely. I mean, as a more final topic, we did want to discuss like what makes people good to have around you, right? And in the end of the day, I think it's important to stress again, like everyone has their own formula for success, right? Like me and you are very good friends and we're never going to be completely aligned on everything. Right? The same way that you and someone else who's equally as successful as you aren't going to be completely aligned in what you do. And the people around you don't need to be either, right? Like you can be completely different types of people and still get on and be able to have good conversations and bring value to each other by questioning each other's thoughts, right?
Yeah.
But yeah, like overall, would you say that like personally, at least I would say that being able to question things, A, and B, being able to give without feeling the need to receive are the two most powerful things that you can look for in a person. Would you add anything to that?
No, I think that's one of the things that I value a lot in you, the fact that you question a lot and you don't like take society's norms and then you're a big giver, I think one of the things I'd like to stress is like, it's going to be different for everyone, right? But one of the things I don't agree with that maybe a lot of like entrepreneur pages push, right, is the fact that you need to have a circle of winners in like a business sense, like I feel there's a lot of beauty in having people that live like just have success or are really passionate about what they're doing in a complete different area of life. And it's also important to, not only is it important to have these people in your life, but it's also important to make sure you allow them to do that thing, Like I feel like a lot of people, especially as you start on the personal development space, I'm sure you felt this, right? Where you're reading all these books or you're leveling up and you have these mentorships and like you see yourself progressing, right? And you want to bring others up with you in that with the same, like in the same sort of vertical, right? In that same sort of area, right? But it's never going to work until they're ready. For example, I think one of the things about us is like I never pushed, like when I started like being more business minded and all that stuff, I never really pushed the idea of like starting a business on you. It was just like two people coming together and just like sharing stuff about life and sharing experiences from different world views. You then decided to take like a similar path, but there was never, at least I feel, right, there's never like a sense of like pressure or look at this or like you should do this. And I feel like that's important because I've definitely done that maybe with siblings or family members as well, like oh, look at this, or you should eat, you should eat this, you should do this type of diet, or you should sleep in this way. Like at the end of the day, people need to want to change themselves, and maybe their version of success and their process and path is not the same as yours. So just understand that like sometimes you don't like having a circle of winners where it's just like maybe a bit toxic because like everyone's competing against each other and like, you know, no one's really there for the right reason. It's just like everyone's just trying to leech as much as possible from each other. It's not always the best type of circle that you want to have as an entrepreneur, you know, leveling up. So if you feel, you know, for those listening, right, if you feel this pressure where you need to have very successful entrepreneurs around you and, you know, this close circle of like winners, understand that no, that's not the case. Like you could have people who are really passionate about what they do. Maybe financially they're not, you know, they're not crushing it, but they're really happy and they can add value. They can help you see the world through a different lens. That's massive, man.
Yeah. No, that last point, helping you see the world through different lens. Honestly, I think that's really like what we've built on off of our relationship with each other since we were like 10. It's the fact that we could throw stuff at each other and like help each other see the world in a slightly different way or view things slightly differently or take another perspective. And you don't need someone to be a trillionaire to be able to show you that. The same way that someone who's the same level as you and within the same field as you and doing similar things in life to you might really not have that much to add to you. You know, just because they're successful and just because they're this or that, it doesn't mean that your circle is particularly great because of it.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah, 100%. Some of the happiest people I know, I'm talking about entrepreneurs now. Like you look at their circle and, you know, it's either childhood friends who were not just situational friends, but like real people, or just people who have like complete different verticals. But, you know, it's not like you need to meet up with these people to mastermind all the time. Like I think the way I view relationships in business, number one, I'm very, very, you know, very, very careful. And that's one of the things that you know I've spoken to you about. Like you just need to as you level up. And I spoke with, you know, to one of my mentees as well, in a student interview. Like you just need to be careful. You know, the people that start popping up and you start like connecting with, because not in a like skeptical way, but just like understand that there's a lot of people who do like to take advantage, right? And who do like to be there for the wrong reasons. And I think everyone will make the, you know, mistakes, and I definitely will, judging people and whether they're good for me or not. But you just progressively get better at like spotting those type of behaviors early on. But just understanding that like you just have to be careful as well with the people that you do let in as you start leveling up. And that's why the OGs, you know, the original friends, the people who are there from the very get-go is a really safe place to tap into, and for really like for life friends.
Just on that then, to wrap up, how would you say it's different? How would you say your interactions are different between the people who have been with you from the start? Maybe you're not even as close as you and I are these days, but who you grew up with, compared to people who you meet nowadays. Mm-hmm. The way they interact with you, like the feelings you have towards these people, do you see like a very clear difference between one and the other?
Yes, you get the odd case where someone you didn't know turns out to be like an amazing addition to your life. But oftentimes with like relationships, especially via social media and in the business realm and agency space, like I feel like I'm dodging bullets sometimes, you know. I feel like I'm in the Matrix, man, dodging bullets because I've been stabbed in the back, and there's just a lot of that going on, you know. The same way that, you know, there's a lot of like people out there trying to scam people, like, you know. Sometimes I'm just generally just mind blown by just how many people like try to do that online. You know, this is to a lesser, you know, it's like a less, like it's not as grave of a thing. It's not as serious of a thing, but like it's still very, 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 you know, just an ugly thing, you know, to be stabbed in the back or to be taken advantage of. So I tread waters very carefully, right? When I'm meeting people and to let them close, you know, to let them into my core circle and into my in proximity with me. Like I do quite a lot of vetting, especially if money is involved. I feel like money has this sort of power over a lot of people that will make them do anything. It's like, you know, when a pet, you know, when a dog or like any animal tastes blood for the first time, they just go crazy. Like it's well known, right? When they taste blood, like their whole demeanor changes. For a lot of people, the same thing happens with money, right? Like once you get a bit of a glimpse of what money can do for them, because they're very based on the external side of things, like they're like dogs that have tasted blood, right? And they'll do anything for that feeling. And they don't care about human relationships, or they don't care about any of that. I don't want to scare people off by saying this, but you just have to like be careful. Like I think it's part of the human experience. And as you start leveling up, especially if there's money involved, there will be people who smell the blood and who will do anything. So that's that. And then, you know, compared to the OG people and like friends from childhood, just it's a safer bet. Again, obviously I'm very open to new relationships in my life, right? But it's a safer bet because these people loved you before any of the, you know, accolades or external successes. And I think that's the big thing. That's like the main thing here. The fact that they loved you for who you are and not for what you have. And that's what you want to look for.
Absolutely. So I mean, to wrap up, I think we touched on situational friends, the power of the OGs, and having things in common with them, and growing up with these people and the love you feel. We touched on societal pressures and not having to conform with the norm. How to deal with like parents, of course, keeping in mind different cultures. But also most importantly, the fact that like everyone's journey is different.
Yeah.
Right? And everyone's a different person. And the people you attract are going to reflect the type of person you are.
Yeah.
And
we'll talk about that for ages, man.
Yeah, absolutely. That's a whole other topic to dive into. But yeah, just keeping in mind that like, of course you can take information and you can learn from other people, but the person you're going to learn the most from is yourself, and what works for you and what doesn't. And yeah, don't be afraid to take drastic measures.
Yeah. I just don't want to let that very important topic that you brought up pass. I just want to hit it for like a minute. I feel like if you constantly are attracting people that let you down or stab you in the back, you are attracting these people. You're literally a magnet for these people. So instead of like beating yourself up and saying, oh, people should not be trusted, like take a hard look at yourself and check yourself. Like either you're not putting enough boundaries in place, or your behavior is attracting these type of people. So yeah, if you're complaining because you're attracting the wrong people, you are the biggest problem there. Yeah. It's not these people. There's a ton of great people in the world, and you attract the people that resonate at the same type of frequency. So level up your frequency, check yourself, and you'll start attracting better people. It's crazy. I mean, and we could talk about this on a different part, but it's crazy to think about that as you start leveling up, you start, and ideally, right, you start attracting different level of people. And for example, with my girlfriend, like Augusta, like I compare the type of relationships and women I attracted in my to my life before her, and these were great girls, but just didn't really work. Why? Because I wasn't resonating at the type of frequency that I should have been resonating to attract the type of person that I've attracted now. The same way that she's grown as well, right? So it's just that's what's cool about life and relationships. It's the fact that as you also, and I feel like this is a recurring topic, as you start leveling up and you start kind of setting more boundaries and being more clear about the type of people you want in your life, and resonating and vibrating at a higher frequency, you start attracting the higher quality people. So if you're for those starting out, if you're worried that you're not going to find high level people and really cool people that you want to attract into your life, focus on yourself first. Yeah. Don't focus on looking for these people, because they're nowhere to be found. Trust me, they're only where you want to look is internally. Level this thing up, level yourself up, and you'll attract these people. It just happens. It's tough to understand, but it just happens miraculously, just by magic almost. You just meet them in the weirdest of places, but it just happens when you focus first on yourself.
100%. Yeah, you become a magnet. Like
Yeah.
attracts like.
Facts.
But
I think that's a good place to wrap it up, man. I did one, that was a little rant at the end, but I think like, I mean, we could have a complete different part, and probably we're gonna do a part on like relationships and like more like, more that on those side of things. The fact that you have to level up fast, and then you start attracting other people instead of fixating on the external.
absolutely. No, yeah, that'd be super interesting to dive into.
If you guys want to hear that conversation or much more, don't forget to follow us if you're doing audio only, or if you're doing YouTube, go ahead and drop a subscribe and hit the like button. And as always, we'll catch you in the next episode. Peace.